there, guys. 3 things. Number 1, my cats are terrible. My lovely little ball of fur has managed to chew through the HDMI splitter's power cable. The problem is, without an HDMI splitter, I have a very, very difficult time recording gameplay footage with any reliability. And because I can't do that, that directly translates to me not really being able to give you guys footage with any regularity, which is bad. The good news is the replacement HDMI splitter is coming in tomorrow, and tomorrow as of when I record this, actually today as of when you're watching it, so we should actually be able to have, as of Thursday, more Persona coming up, more Tales coming up, more everything coming up. So very, very slight hiccup, but I want to let you know that's kind of why the videos have abruptly slowed down for no discernible reason. Hey, now I have a discernible reason, that's awesome. The second thing that I want to talk about is what's going on with Atlus's whole Let's Play guidelines thing. And I should mention, as you can see in the background, there's a lot of little Persona openings playing. I'm going to just be playing the openings from various Persona games for this whole video. I want to make sure, there's a lot of you that aren't watching the Persona Let's Play because you want to play it yourself, and I totally get that. And that's why I made the decision not to show any footage from Persona 5 other than the, intro video that's been around for 2 years now. So, I think everyone interested in Persona has at least seen the opening video. I don't think that's going to be spoiled to anybody. But, for those of you that somehow missed the memo, Atlus released a statement basically putting a lot of restrictions on when, what parts of the game, players could capture footage from. There was a hard stop date, and if you went past that date, there were all kinds of, they would try and get your video taken down, they would claim copyright infringement, they would demonetize it, they would do all kinds of stuff. There's a couple of problems I have with this. The first one is that, as I just said, they would claim copyright infringement. And yet, in their statement, they've made it very, very clear they're not doing this because they consider it copyright infringement. They're doing it in order to try and make sure that, footage of certain areas doesn't get out too quickly because it would serve as a spoiler to people who haven't played the game yet. And they want everyone to have the chance to play the game and not be spoiled. Now, this may be semantic, this may be me cutting hairs, but they're not concerned about posting footage from the game. They're not concerned about protecting their copyright. They're concerned about spoilers. They have explicitly said so. In fact, the guidelines even say you can release videos. It doesn't even matter if you commentate them. You can directly post gameplay footage with no commentary whatsoever, which is pretty blatant copyright violation, in my opinion. But they're okay with that. They don't care about that. So, why am I hitting this point? Why am I talking about this so severely? Well, the 2 big reasons of it is that one of the things they specifically say is that they may have it, have the video taken down and give you a copyright strike on your channel. If you file a Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown notice because of an event that you don't consider to be copyright infringement, that's called fraud. And the fact that they're willing to commit fraud in order to censor videos they don't like sets a very ugly precedent. That is the weakest of my concerns, because I will say, even if the reason they want the video taken down is because of potential spoilers and they don't want that information out there, if the video is still a violation of copyright, it's not really fraud, it's just sort of like ethical fraud, if that makes sense. So, I don't really think that's a legal argument against them. It really makes my stomach churn slightly. It makes me very uncomfortable that Atlus is willing to do this, or at least willing to threaten this, because it really undermines who I think they are as a company. My second concern is a little bit more tangible and a little bit more legal. They didn't actually publish these restrictions until the game was released. However, myself and a whole lot of other people had already paid for the game by then, and do not have the opportunity for a refund. They waited until the game was released and the opportunity for a refund had gone away, because once the game is released, digital-only purchases, you can't get a refund anymore. So it's like, they put the game up for pre-order, they told you all this stuff about the game, they took your money, but then when the game's released, they suddenly release a whole bunch of more conditions that there was no indication was coming, and they want that to be binding. And no, I'm sorry. Any restriction which is not made clear at the time the transaction takes place, I give you money, you give me the game. Any additional criteria that is not communicated at that point where the game is paid for is legally unenforceable. You can't just add extra crap after you've already taken the money and expect me to have to follow it. That is massively unethical. It's really bothersome to me that a company would even consider doing that, because there's a certain, a contract that's entered in, hey, here's a product that we're offering, this is how much we want for it. Okay, you gave us the money, here, we'll go ahead and guarantee you the product on release. Oh, by the way, we didn't tell you when you actually paid for it, but here's this other stuff that you can't actually do with the thing you just bought. No. That's one of the reasons why very, very frequently developers will put things in the terms of services for programs that they have absolutely no way of ever enforcing, because the terms of service isn't presented until you actually install the thing, way after the sale is complete. So that's why you never see anyone actually getting sued over like terms of service violations, because game companies know they would never win that suit, not in a million years. So that's the second issue I have with it, is the fact that they're taking the money well before they're presenting these extra restrictions, and yet they're expecting these extra restrictions to hold, bearing and are actually willing to act on them, despite the fact they didn't actually disclose them in a reasonable manner. And then there's the third one, and the third one is really the big one. The third issue I have is, of course, the question of fair use. Back when I talked about my first point about how they were kind of committing ethical fraud by claiming copyright over something that wasn't really copyright, the big reason that's an ethical issue and not a legal issue is that despite their reason for taking a video down, if a video does actually contain copyright information, then it's absolutely their prerogative to take it down, regardless of what the reason is. It's still a legitimate action to take. So we have to look at fair use, and we have to determine whether or not fair use does actually prevent Let's Play videos from being copyright infringements or not. For those of you that are uninitiated, fair use is a legal concept that allows an individual to use copyrighted content without the permission of, or even notification of, the person who owns the copyright. It is it's something that was set up in order to protect works of parody, works of criticism, or commentary about a subject, where you can effectively use something that someone else created in order to really delve into it, and it's really there to promote creativity and allow for the sharing of knowledge more readily than copyright would otherwise allow. So, in looking at the law, the way it is set up is that fair use is an incredibly murky subject and a murky question. There is no real legal precedent on whether or not a Let's Play video constitutes fair use, because nothing of the sort has ever ended up in a court of law. There is, however, quite a bit of legal precedent on fair use itself, and looking at what has been said about the different questions that have to be asked, we can get a pretty good idea about what the court should rule if it ever actually went to court. And in trying to assess whether or not a Let's Play video should be considered fair use, we kind of have to look at that. So, the actual Digital Limited Copyright Act does define fair use, and it gives you 4 questions that have to be answered in order to help determine whether or not a given copyright infringement should be considered fair use or not. It's important to note that it is by no means necessary for all 4 of these questions to be answered, in favor of fair use in order for it to be considered fair use, nor do all 4 of them have to go in the direction of not being fair use in order for it to not be considered fair use. They are simply questions to be asked in order to help facilitate the determination. Obviously, if all 4 of them are answered in the terms of fair use, you basically can't get out of answering it for fair use, but that's by no means a requirement. So let's look at them individually, and we'll kind of look at what the case law shows. The first factor really boils down to whether or not the work, the fair use or the alleged fair use, is transformative, or if it is additive. Are you simply restating a copyrighted point in order to bolster your own argument? Or are you using something in order to add to discussion, in order to delve into new things, in order to draw new conclusions? Are you using something that belongs to someone else, but you're actually creating new content with that? A good example that I always give is, those like lyric videos where they will just play a song and then on the screen they will have the lyrics come up in time with the song. Would not really be considered transformative, because you're not providing anything new there. It may be for a few songs where you can't really understand the lyrics, you're actually letting them understand what is being sung in the song. So that might be considered minorly transformative, but still, you are not personally adding anything to that experience. You're clarifying what's already there. A Let's Play video kind of makes it depends on the specific video. I have certainly seen videos that are just raw footage. There's no commentary whatsoever, it's just the game being played. They're usually pretty long videos, and I don't really enjoy watching them, but those, I would also say, probably will not be considered transformative. I say probably simply because the act of playing a game in and of itself is already slightly transformative. And the reason for that is that the game developer cannot claim the game as a whole. They can claim the visual assets, they can claim the sprites, they can claim the polygons, they can claim the text, they can claim the music, they can claim the videos, they can claim all of the elements that make up the game, but the actual act of bringing those elements together to progress the storyline forward is not something they can claim. That's actually something the player is doing. So already the act of the game coming together and being played is a little bit transformative under a strict reading of copyright. But then when you start to really delve into the second level of things and start looking at a Let's Play video that has a commentary track overlaying the game, where there's a lot of analysis being done, speculation being done, conjecture being done, as well as, humor, comparisons to other works. I mean, there's just a lot of things being added to the experience of watching the video that are absolutely nowhere in the original context. Then you've got a pretty dang solid case for transformation. To put things into perspective here, there was a case that happened over in England, actually, where a publishing house put together a Harry Potter encyclopedia, where they would take various like locations and mystical words and specific terms and define them as they were defining the books. Because they were taking information from 8 different books, they argued that it should be considered fair use. It was ultimately not considered fair use, but it is relevant to say that even that was considered moderately transformative. Wasn't transformative enough to make it fair use, but just that, just putting stuff located in several different locations and putting it in one place was considered moderately transformative. So the bar isn't all that high on what is considered transformative, and so I would say this first question is strongly in the support of a fair use judgment. The second factor is the nature of the copyrighted work. Specifically, a factual paper is more open to fair use because that being able to use like scientific data and research in your argument goes a long way into just expanding knowledge, and we don't want copyright claims to get in the way of like scientific advancement. Something that is fictional is typically much harder to prove fair use for because there's not a big need to do that. However, they also do say that a work that is published is much, much more easily able to be fair use than a work that is unpublished. If something is not even published yet and you're taking the information and choosing to, go with it yourself, you are actually denying the author the right of deciding when that work will come to light and when that work will be presented. So, in this case with Persona 5, obviously, Let's Plays did not start prior to the date that the game was released. However, because it is a work of fiction, I would actually argue the second point goes slightly in the favor of the publisher. It probably argues against fair use a little bit. It's not completely clear, because we have been given two different criteria to look at here. One of them favors the publisher, one of them favors fair use. But I would still say overall, yeah, it's very difficult for the second point to go in favor of fair use, I would certainly argue. The third factor is a little bit interesting, in that it doesn't work the way you would think it would. The third factor is typically the amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. The reason that this is relevant is that you would look at that and you would read that and you would immediately say, well, Dameol, you're showing the whole damn game. There's no way that you're going to be able to claim fair use on this one, buddy. And you would think that, and I really believe that you would be wrong. And here's why. Again, if you look at the case history and look at where fair use has actually gone to trial, overwhelmingly, you don't actually see a examination of the total amount that is being taken. You do a little bit. If there is very, very clearly that, more copyrighted material is being taken than is necessary for the purpose of whatever the potential fair use factor is, that works against you. But if your goal is to go through the entire game and perform a review of that game, then you kind of have to go through the entire game. The real question that must be answered in a case like that, as is, has come up in several cases. The one that jumps to my mind immediately is Campbell versus Acuff Rose Music, which effectively dealt with a question of there was a very small part of a song that was used in another song, and they argued that they weren't using very much of it, but the court ruled that they were using the most iconic refrain, so they were taking the heart of the song in question. So even though they weren't using very much of it, they were using the most iconic bit. And they said the court ruled that what you really have to look at in a case like this is not so much what is the total amount being taken, but are they taking the very core essence of the copyrighted work in question. Well, that question becomes very interesting when you start looking at a video game, because what is the core essence of a video game? Well, a video game, unlike other forms of media, is interactive. A YouTube video, however, is not. Other than being able to pause it and play it, there's not a whole lot of interactivity to a YouTube video. So, I don't think it can be effectively argued that you are taking the core of Persona 5 or any other video game if you're not taking that critical interactivity element, which is the very definition of making a game. If you're not replicating that, then you're not replicating the core experience. You're not taking the heart of what Persona 5 is. And on the same token, the fourth question. The fourth question is kind of the big question that still needs to be answered, because there is no clear answer to it. And that is the question of, does the potential fair use materially damage the source material? In other words, is the source material actively losing money, or would it actively lose money if the fair use were made widely available? This one gets also tricky, because there's no really good argument or really good documentation on, frankly, either side of the question. There are certainly a lot of, examples that you could point to that show that Let's Play videos actually enhance things that enhance the saleability, and that games will get a definite boost from Let's Plays being out there. Persona 4 actually is a great example of this. Persona 4 got a pretty substantial boost in sales shortly after Giant Bomb did their Endurance run. A lot of people got interested in the series. Similarly, I myself played Persona 3 and Persona 4 purely because this wasn't fair use, but Extra Credits did a section on Persona games, and they talked about how Kanji was probably the most maturely handled somewhat homosexual character that they've ever come across. He wasn't made the butt of jokes. He was treated very respectfully, frankly. And so, because of that, you know, there is certainly quite a bit of circumstantial evidence that says, yeah, actually, Let's Play videos enhance the profitability of these markets. But then you've got other situations, like the infamous situation with Fat Dragon Cancer. Fat Dragon Cancer, unfortunately, was hugely popular on YouTube, and a lot of people made quite a bit of money through playing it, but the actual developers didn't see that translate into sales, because quite a few people got the experience they needed by just watching it instead of playing it. So that is where the big question of fair use comes from, because they have said that does the existence of the fair use negatively impact the profitability of the original material is one of the two big questions. It and the transformative question. But there are a few things that also need to be discussed. Kat, will you please stop walking in front of the mic? God dang. Number one. If a Let's Play is considered a form of critique or analysis, then it actually doesn't matter as much whether or not the existence of the Let's Play negatively impacts the profitability of the source game. For the very simple reason that if it's a critique or a review, then obviously if the critique is bad, if the game is not very good, then you could easily say, yeah, this is impacting my sales. They went and they talked about what a bad game I made, and then no one bought it. But yeah, that's not going to be an argument against fair use. That's an argument of, oh, well, people were able to know they didn't want to buy that, and so they didn't buy it. I'm not really sure that applies to this case, because Persona 5 is amazing. I'm really enjoying it so far. But that is something to be considered, because again, that's some of the history of what has been discussed and what has been determined from this. Is that if you have a situation where sales are being lost, but not because of anything that it is being lost because the information is being made more available and people are choosing not to buy, that's not necessarily an argument against fair use. So that's something to keep in mind. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what I have to really look at in terms of how I feel about this is that I really feel like Atlus is overstepping their bounds and actively trying to use the threat of a copyright infringement over something that has nothing to do with copyright. They're not really concerned with copyright, and it's clear that they are like that. Like I said, in their guidelines, they allowed you to do things that are pretty copyright infringing. So it's not that they're really trying to protect their copyright, it's that they're trying to censor things that they don't want out there. And again, I know I'm just re-summing up here, but they also put these restrictions in place after they already accepted money for the product, which is massively unethical. And lastly, you know, looking at the case history, I feel pretty confident that fair use holds up very well to the scrutiny of this. There was one case that was very, very, very specific to this. It was a case that happened back in 2004. It was the NX IVM Corporation versus the Ross Institute. And what happened was that the NX IVM Corporation was a corporation that made like teacher's aids. They had a whole bunch of like coursework laid out that would help people, help high school teachers kind of figure out their curriculum, to plan their year. It gave a lot of like sample questions to assign as homework, stuff like that. And the Ross Institute did a study on teaching techniques and what was and wasn't effective, and ended up using a lot of different examples coming from the NX IVM Corporation. It ended up being a very, very massive study, and a very, very significant amount of the NX IVM Corporation's, suggestions and coursework and other things ended up being used in this. So, NX IVM Corporation sued Ross Institute because they were reusing a lot of copyrighted content and took them to court. I bring this up because using something in order to facilitate a discussion of its place in the overall media sounds an awful lot what at least I do with my Let's Plays. I'm constantly looking at them, talking about what does work, talking about what doesn't, speculating where things are going, predicting what is happening, giving a lot of insight and analysis as I play the game. Or at least that's pretty much my intention. I may not always do it well, but that's the point. That's why I do what I do. And when this actually went to court, what the court found was that it absolutely qualified as fair use. The reason was it was overwhelmingly transformative. The study had a very, very drastically different aim than the study guides did. Although it reused a substantial portion of the study guide material, it did so in a way that did not replicate or facilitate what this material was for. It didn't really touch the heart. The heart of the original material was to give enough information that teachers could very easily make a semester-long curricula, whereas the formatting of the Ross Institute paper made that almost impossible. That kind of also went to the fact that it didn't replace the need of the original. This is all a very, very good analogy or replication of what a Let's Play video is. Obviously, I would say the Ross Institute does a better job than most Let's Play videos, but you're not graded on how good a job you do. You're graded on what is it you're trying to do. Does the existence of a Let's Play video replace the need for the game in question? No. The game in question is interactive, otherwise it shouldn't be a video game. Does the existence of it just repeat the game, or is there transformative things happening? Yeah, there's a very high level of transformation going on. So, I realize that I'm just being horribly long-winded. I said I wouldn't do that. I obviously lied. But that's kind of my overall scatterbrained thought on what is going on here, and where do I think Atlus went wrong with this, and why do I... Because I've said before that what I'm doing is legal and protected by fair use, and a few people have tried to call me out and be like, no, dude, it's not. It's just not, man. And I keep arguing that yes, it actually is. And now I've kind of given you the reasons why I think that. So, that leaves me with, now that I've gone over all this forever, what am I going to do about it? And here I run into my own ethical dilemma. If Atlus had simply said, hey guys, we're coming out with this game, we really put a lot of our heart into it, there's a lot of very cool storyline stuff that goes on, and we want to make sure there's not videos around, with very, very key moments that come up. So, what we'd really like is if you guys wouldn't post any videos past this certain in-game date for the first 60 days. We don't want this coming up prior to everyone having a chance to play it. I would have said that is completely and entirely reasonable. I would have had no problem doing that. That's not what Atlus did, but if that is actually what they want to do, I completely support them in that. And I'll even go on record. I do feel like there should be a way for content creators to have some control over what information is made available about their game, especially within the first 2 to 3 months after it comes out. There's absolutely a lot of just critical storyline stuff that a spoiler will just destroy you on and make it just completely remove your desire to play the game. So I understand the desire to be protective of that, to let people really experience that. It's a very famous story is that Super Smash Bros. Brawl, or Melee, I think it was Brawl. Brawl was the one that had the Subspace Emissary, and they decided not to repeat the Subspace Emissary because after they published it, a whole bunch of YouTube videos came out, and it killed their creative spirit. They were very frustrated that so many cool moments were just being spoiled to the entire world on YouTube. So, I do think there is absolutely room to say, hey, a creator should be able to dictate what is and isn't published within a certain time frame of release. I would say that time frame is 2 months. After 2 months, every passing time decreases that. So, with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep forging ahead in Persona 5. I'm going to keep publishing a video a day until I get to the date in question. If you don't know what date I'm talking about, go read the press release. Ultimately, the date in question is apparently either the date of a major reveal or the last day before the reveal actually happens. Once I get to that date, I will put Persona to the side until the 2-month mark. Where's the 2 months coming from? I made it up, because Atlus has not given me any actual reasonable argument of how long it should be, so I just have to go with my own moral compass. I just spent a massively long video explaining why I don't really respect Atlus on this one, and why I don't feel like I should be forced to kind of knuckle under and do what they say, because they've just handled this entire situation deeply unethically, and I have a lot of very serious problems with the way they approached it. However, this isn't a zero-sum game. I can't just say, well, Atlus is unethical, therefore I can do whatever I want. And as long as I'm sitting here and I can acknowledge that what Atlus is doing does have some grounding in reality and does make some degree of sense, I cannot, in good conscience, basically not care, if that makes sense. So, I'm going to push ahead until I get to the date in question, then I will stop until the 2-month mark after the game comes out, and then I'll just keep going. So, I think that's probably the best way of going forward in a way that I am comfortable with, and I don't want to actually cost Atlus sales. Despite how much the way they're handling this is making me ashamed of them, I do not think it is anywhere near appropriate for me to effectively say, well, these guys aren't acting very well, so I don't have to either. That's not mature. That's not the way I would want other people to act towards me, and I'm sure I have said things that are not appropriate in the past. So, very long video. Thank you for staying here with me. I realize I just ramble a lot, but you know what? That's what I do. You guys are used to that. So, I will see you tomorrow when Persona will resume, and we'll also get back to our other uploads. And yeah, look forward to it. Glad I was able to fill this time since I can't actually do a recording yet, and this at least gave you something Persona related to watch and hopefully think about. See you next time.